Welcome to Evangelism on Fire podcast. My name is Mark Thomas, an ordained pastor, a teacher of the best-selling book of all time, your host, and most importantly, your evangelism coach. Every episode, I bring you an inspiring message to equip you to live the most exciting life God has created you to live by actively sharing your faith in Jesus with others. I believe in the power of the gospel and the potential of all Christians to live out the mission of the Great Commission. I believe the best way for Christians to grow is to go. Listen, it's time for a revolution in every Christian's life around the world so that every person, everywhere around the world can hear the gospel of Jesus Christ from a friend or a family member through one-on-one evangelism. I believe this podcast will truly inspire you, and I believe it will inspire so many people that you know. And if you're inspired and feeling moved to share this, then please message some friends, post this on social media, and let people know about this episode so we can get the message out more. I appreciate you and everyone listening right now. And a quick reminder, subscribe to the podcast right now, rate it, review it, spread the word on social media, and spread the message of Evangelism on Fire forward. Welcome, Evangelism on Fire listeners, to today's podcast episode. Man, today's episode is super special for me. I am here with a lifelong friend, Mr. Mack Mullins from the CEO. Mack, how you doing, my brother?
Honestly, I couldn't. I've never been better, and I couldn't be better, man. It's just doing fantastic, And God, it's great to see you. Great to see you.
It's
I
so
swear
great to
you don't
see you.
age.
Yeah. Man, we were talking before the podcast episode started, and I'm trying to remember, when's the last time we spoke in person together? How long has that been? Do you know?
The last I remember was probably like 92 when you came to Atlanta to visit me, and we hung out for a little while. Then I think you went off to Vegas. We might have talked on the phone a couple times after that.
Yeah.
We've obviously, have kept in touch via social media, but, face to face was probably 92 when I had hair to my waist, and you did too, probably.
Yeah. That's what I was thinking, man.
Mhm.
It's so awesome, man. I've been following you, like you say, on social media. We've been keeping in touch, text messaging each other. And man, I've been following your music for, ever since you've been putting out music, man. I was following your music on the streets in the clubs at Richmond. First time I ever saw you was at Newgate Prison, man. I'm taking you back to Newgate Prison days off of Gray Street, Richmond, Virginia, man.
I remember that, and I remember it real plain because, it was funny. When you first start off in music and you start your first band, first start writing songs, it's much like anything else. You're just scratching the surface. You're learning a skill. You're probably not that good at it. And I know we definitely weren't, but it was a foundation to where we're going. But right there, right up front, was my buddy from high school. He's got his hands in the air. You see the emotion in his face. I'm singing, probably some cheesy little love song to my girlfriend at the time, and you're just eating it up. And it was that kind of stuff, honestly, and those kinds of reactions and that kind of support from my friends, and that really helped catapult me to continue to move forward in music. It wasn't necessarily great, definitely wasn't worth putting on an album, but it was that encouragement from you and a couple other people that we hung out with at the time that really is kind of like, hey, maybe there is something to this. And I'm very appreciative to you and to those guys for going to Newgate Prison and like I said, put the fist in the air and kind of encouraging us on. So thank you for that.
Well, thank you, man. I mean, those were some of the best times of my younger life, man. So to see where you started and where you're at now, and to see how God has transformed your music over the years, which we're going to get into that, man, here in a little bit. But Mac, so I often begin my interviews by asking this question: what was the first pivotal event in your life that shaped who you are today?
Yeah, and you know this story, you probably do, that, I was adopted when I was 7, so I spent the first 7 years of my life living foster home to foster home, and, as you can imagine, it wasn't necessarily a good time. And I remember and I had a concept of God at the time. I didn't know exactly what it was, but I knew that there was a higher being that looked out for me. And I remember swinging on a tire swing and looking up at this tree because this old knotty tree to me was, that representation of God. And I remember praying to that God and saying, "Hey, if you're real, I want to be adopted." And Mark, I tell you, a week later, my dad, who would end up adopting me, and my mom came to that foster home and visited me for the first time, me and my sister.
Wow.
And, probably a month after that, we're living with them. So that one simple prayer, that one step of faith is, for someone who had no faith background at all, not only did he answer that prayer, but he became real to me. And the prayers were a legitimate conversation with my heavenly father. So to me, that not only was it pivotal in my, earthly life, it was pivotal in my heavenly relationship with our Lord because he answered my prayer almost immediately.
Wow.
So
So when he answered your prayer, you had 100% total confidence that, hey, God is real. And not only that, but God answered your prayers.
yeah, and from that point on, I never lost that faith. I certainly had times where I was the prodigal son, but I never lost that he was real and that this relationship was real and that God answers prayers and that God hears me. I
Yeah.
never lost that. And to this day, it's obviously, 50 years of stacking onto that proof day in, day out, big event, small event, but that was the first time that he became real to me and that my life here on earth and then completely changed.
Wow. That's powerful, man. So
Mhm.
let's tell us more about your childhood. I want to take a deeper dive into that. You said earlier that your childhood wasn't good. It was rough. It wasn't ideal. Tell us a little more about your childhood, and then tell us about where you grew up.
Yeah, it's funny. You don't know what you don't know. And it's not like I was born into a mom and dad type situation and with brothers and sisters. And then that got broken up, like I had lost something. I have no memories before being adopted of being in a family. I certainly knew I had a mother who was a drug addict, who was an alcoholic. I certainly knew that I had a father who was an alcoholic Vietnam vet. And I knew that those two didn't live together because on occasion I would go spend some time with my mom and on occasion I would go spend some time with my dad, but most of my life was foster home to foster home and navigating multiple family type situations where I didn't live with my brother. I didn't live with my sister. I lived with strangers but I didn't know anything different. It's not like I had Christmas and birthdays and then I didn't. I never had Christmas and birthdays. So I didn't miss what I didn't know. So I just knew something wasn't normal. It didn't feel, there wasn't that bond, that relationship, that love, that whatever. It was just what it was. So it was, it was obviously difficult considering the situation and the types of environments that we would be put into and the things that would happen. You obviously know aren't good, and that this is not where you want to be. And then by the time you turn 5, 6, 7, you start to realize that, hey, I'm different. I don't have a mommy and a daddy. I don't live with my brothers and sisters. This isn't right. And I want something different. And quite frankly, the social workers or whatever would tell you, hey, look, you're not going to live with your mom and dad. And the best thing that could happen for you is to be adopted. So whatever that meant, I wanted that. So I
Mm,
prayed for that.
yeah.
And that's when that happened.
Wow.
And, like I said, I was right about the age of 7 when I got adopted by Moon Loretta. my mom and dad, and gets me choked up because my mom's passed, but my dad, he's about to go be with the Lord.
Yeah.
So, but he was the best thing that could happen.
Wow. So, man, that's so powerful. And I know Moon, I know your father, and I know Loretta. Man, I remember she used to give us rides to Skate World Friday nights, man.
That's it. Yeah.
She used to take us to was it Skate World, Skate Land, or Skate whatever,
Golden
man.
Skate World. Yeah, that's right.
Golden Skate World, man. She used to take us there, drop us off. I think she would go play bingo.
Yeah.
Right? And
Yeah.
then she'd come back and pick us up. Man, those were some of the most awesome times of my life, man.
Wasn't it?
Yeah, I remember riding in the back. What was that? She had what type of car? A Cougar, man. Riding in the back, man, and just know that
You
we're
have a
cruising
great
down the
memory.
road. Well,
Yeah.
hey, man, because I remember that was freedom. When I
Right.
got in that car and we're in the back seat and we're rolling the Golden Skate World, and oh, it was on, man. It's freedom. It's time to party, man. That was
Yeah.
like heaven for me, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and so Moon and Loretta both in my life had a really, really big impact. So, hey, what were some of your most challenging moments during your upbringing? What were some of the best times of your life growing up? So, tell us about the biggest challenges and some of the best times of your life growing up.
After you spend the first 7 years in that type of environment, everything that kind of comes after that, um, doesn't seem as challenging. So, we certainly had our moments. I mean, my mom and dad did end up getting divorced. It wasn't pretty, and my sister went and lived with my mom. My brother and I ended up staying with my dad. My dad is a saint. I love him. He's fantastic. It was great. We had a great time. I went to, a great high school, had a bunch of great friends. We played sports together. I mean, we were a tight knit community. I loved every minute of it. I don't have a whole lot of bad things to say necessarily about that period of time of life, but I can't say enough about how great it was. I mean, little farm community in Virginia. And to this day, some of my best friends just came out of that little farm community.
Yeah.
And, I'm so completely grateful for it. And I had, none of us had a whole bunch of money, but man, we had a whole bunch of fun. We had
Yeah.
a great time,
Yeah, absolutely, man. Absolutely. Yeah, some of my fondest memories, money can't buy, like what you're mentioning. All right, so here's what I want to know. Here's what my audience wants to know, man. What music had the greatest influence on you?
Yeah, it's funny because you and I we hung out a lot together growing up, and as important as music was to me, it was to you, and that was one of the reasons why I loved hanging out with you, because we would have just you would put on Led Zeppelin, and you were introducing me to Led Zeppelin and how the greatness of Led Zeppelin. And I was putting on Kiss and Van Halen, the things that, really meant a lot to me. And we were, just kind of sharing our love for music. So, for me, it was, like I said, I was a big Kiss fan. I was a big Van Halen, Foreigner, later on, a lot of the big, hair bands that were, what people would typically call hair bands, the good rock and roll bands. And then, eventually went backwards and discovered more the 70s artists. I was a big Elvis guy, so I like that a lot. So those to me were the foundation of what it is that I'm doing today. And the types of music, the guitar based, the harmonies, the melodies, that kind of thing, that really spoke to me and, obviously spoke to you as well.
Yeah. So what were the specific artists or bands that really shaped your musical identity? I'm surprised you didn't mention Dokken in that list that you just shared with us.
Yeah, it's funny because, like, to me, it started with Elvis and then it went to Kiss for the theatrical, the stage thing of it all. I love the visual aspect of it. And then it became, you start to mature a little bit and you start to break music down. And, we're listening to, to the guitar wizardry of Eddie Van Halen and George Lynch from Dokken and Don Dokken, the way that, he phrased things and the melodies and the harmonies. And it's funny, as a musician, you start to dissect these things. And I don't think I necessarily appreciated, the genius of some of these other bands like a Led Zeppelin, until I got even more mature in my songwriting and, basically my ear. And then you start to appreciate, man, these guys were, um, they were geniuses. I mean, the drumming of a Bonham and just that particular groove and the blues and the R&B aspect of it. When we talked about roller skating, we spent a lot of time roller skating to, 70s and 80s funk. The musicianship in that, 70s and 80s funk, the bass players were phenomenal. So you can really appreciate, a really good groove, a really good drummer, a good bass player, that funk to it. And that had a major impact on my writing today. And when the guys and I sit down to write a record, I have two requirements. One, it has to groove. So your head has to do this. I don't care how heavy it is. Your head has to do this. And two, it has to be of value, meaning I don't want to write ugly things. I don't want to say ugly things. I don't want to hear ugly things. There's enough ugly out there. So it's got to have a good message and it's got to have a groove. And all of that comes from those influences that, you and I grew up on.
Yeah. That's amazing, man. I love it. I love it. I love your passion as you're speaking, man. I mean, your passion is just radiating. So, in my mind, man, like my next question is, how did your journey into music begin? I remember just hanging out with you, man. I don't remember, other than listening to music with you, I don't remember you ever mentioning that you had a band. I just remember that I heard about you having a band and you were having practice in Chester at a storage unit. And I remember vaguely that night I'm showing up and I'm just checking you guys out. You're having your practice, your jam section. And then that's really all I remember. And then the next thing I know, man, you're in multiple clubs in Richmond, Virginia. How did your musical journey start? Like, what was the first step of that?
It's funny. I was drawn to it immediately. Like I said, when the very first Christmas, and again, we didn't do Christmas before I got adopted. Very first Christmas, my very first gift was Kiss Alive 2. And if you remember that record, you open up its gatefold and there's this picture of a stage and everything is on fire and these guys are wearing makeup and you can hear the crowd when they're playing and the bombs going off. And I thought this was the greatest thing I'd ever seen. And of course, watching Elvis, because my parents are big Elvis fans, I mean, he had the suit that sparkled and the crowd was going crazy and he looked larger than life. He wasn't real. He's like a superhero. And Kiss was superheroes and Van Halen were superheroes. And to me, they played music I loved, but they were bigger than just the guy down the street, that's wearing Chuck Taylors and ripped up blue jeans. They were larger than life. So just as kids want to be superheroes or, firemen or cops or whatever, I wanted to be a rock star because whatever that was larger than life. It wasn't just an accountant. No, I know I look like an accountant today. Well, that's what I wanted to be when I grew up. Yeah. So it's kind of like, I want to do that. Well, again, we grew up in, rural Virginia. It wasn't practical to have a drum set in your house. House too small, drum set too loud. It doesn't make sense. Okay. So then if I can't be a drummer, what about a guitar player? Again, same situation, small house, a lot of noise, no can do. My dad was like, well, why don't you just be a singer? Well, he didn't really like that idea once I took it on and started running around the house trying to sing and can't carry a tune in a bucket. But I'm like, that's what I want to be. I want to be a rock star, whatever that takes. So I'll start singing, start writing lyrics. And I call up any guy that I knew that we went to school with, which was at the time was Steve Easter played bass. Jimmy Stokes played drums. There's another cat that could play 2 or 3 chords. Hey, let's start a band. I'll be the singer. And we would get together in their bedrooms and try to hash out Owner of a Lonely Heart. It's 3 basic chords, but we play it over and over and over and over again. And to me, it was the greatest thing I'd ever done in my life. It was better than any sport we could play. It was just, this was it. I loved it. So at that point, I became obsessed with being in a band. Starting a band, being in a band, playing the covers, I don't care, writing my own stuff. But the only way to get to be where, on the big stage with the big lights was to write music. Couldn't necessarily play anything. I mean, later on I learned, but then it was just, I'm just going to write lyrics and I'm going to sing and God willing. It's funny. We talk about God. he took this kid with very little talent, but a whole lot of dream and put him on that stage.
Mm,
So if he could do that for me, he could do that for anybody.
yeah.
God has no limitations. So, I mean, I have limitations, but I'm sitting here today, having played in front of 20,000 people, headlining ahead of Ted Nugent
Yeah.
with my own album on the wall with very little talent.
Mm.
So that's all him.
Yeah. That's amazing, man. That's amazing. So share with us the story behind your band, the CEO. What's the history of your band? And you've got to tell us about your latest release, The Path Remains, which you mentioned as a love letter to your Lord and Savior
That's
that
right.
has come to life. Man, I've got to know more about that. My listeners, they definitely want to know more about that.
Well, you had mentioned the days of playing clubs back in the late 80s, early 90s, the big hair thing. I was very much a part of that. And I decided, at 20 years old, I said, Richmond's a little small. I need to go where the big bands are. And then I looked in my wallet and saw it would take me as far as Atlanta, Georgia. So I couldn't afford Seattle. I couldn't afford LA. As far as I could go was, with the $247 in my pocket was Atlanta. At that
Wait a
time,
minute. Wait a minute. So you left Richmond, Virginia, with a dream of being a rock star. I remember the time that you moved from Richmond to Atlanta, but you're telling me, man, you only had $247 in your pocket as you moved to Atlanta, Georgia.
I had $247 in my pocket. I had a buddy that decided that he would come with me, Paul.
Yeah.
And we had no job, and we had enough money to put down on his down payment for a really not so great apartment in Atlanta. And that was it. His parents sent us with a 5-pound bag of potatoes and
What?
yeah, and some jarred, I want to say, peppers. And that's what we got sent with. So we showed up into Atlanta with no jobs, no food other than that, and no money. Again, through the grace of God, we found a job working in a restaurant, which fed us. And we were able
It was a rotisserie chicken place. I can't remember the
exactly
name
right.
of it.
Yeah, it was DJ Roasters. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And we literally would just work 12 hours a day because we couldn't afford to do anything else. And they fed us. So we did that. And in the meantime, I'm starting bands here in Atlanta. And I'm like, this is why I came. This is what I want to do. I'll work, but I'm going to be a rock star. And keep in mind, this was around 91, 92, and then grunge hit. And then all of a sudden, the big show, the big hair, the big flamboyant thing was now out of style. So, musicians were no longer superstars or, superheroes. They were just the guy next door.
Yeah.
And I didn't want to be the guy next door. I still love music, but I couldn't just get down with it. So then, at that point I decided that, well, maybe this isn't my calling. Maybe I should cut my hair. Maybe I should go to college. So I went to college, maybe I should get a finance degree. I did that. Maybe I should get an MBA. I do that so I can be a Wall Street trader. If I can't be a rock star, maybe I'll be Wolf of Wall Street or, something along those lines, and so, but I never lost that love for music, and it even though I put it on the shelf for a while, and I didn't play in bands, I didn't write any music. It was that itch. It was that burn. It never really leaves you. So I decided to, cut a few songs and people are like, hey, your stuff is cool, but you sound a lot like Ozzy Osbourne. And I'm like, I'm not trying to sound like Ozzy Osbourne. It's just my natural voice. They say, well, you should do a tribute band to Ozzy Osbourne. And I'm like, this was back before tribute bands were a thing.
Right.
There was like maybe a Kiss tribute band, and that was kind of it. But people weren't doing tribute bands. And I'm like, look, I don't look like him. I said, I don't know. I don't know about this. So anyway, I put out an ad. I said, hey, is that cool? Is this cool or not cool? I had a bunch of musicians basically say, hey, cool idea. You should try it. Well, that band, basically, we started an Ozzy Osbourne tribute band. It allowed me to play this character, if you would, stages. We did it for like 15 years and it blew up. I mean, it became huge. Playing basically arenas. I had a 20-person crew. We had trucks. We had, it was massive. And I spent a lot of years doing that. And it still felt a little empty to me. I said, I'm still missing something here. I mean, yes, I'm singing somebody else's stuff. Yes, I'm playing in front of big crowds. Yes, I've got a big crew. but something is missing. And I said, I think it's time to go back to writing my own stuff, my own material. And keep in mind, this was around the period where you talk about the prodigal son. Again, God never left me. I left the house to go on my own adventure. I took my father's money, if you would, to go seek, women and stuff and, riches. It was the same classic story, and I got those things, but still felt empty. So there's actually 3 The CEO albums. The first one was basically just me, but I didn't want to name the album Mack Mullins because who cares? And I know looking like I do now, I don't look like a rock star, so might as well embrace the look. And so I'm like, so I'll just call it The CEO because that's kind of what I look like. I'm a business guy. I wear a suit to work. My hair is gray. Who would want to listen to hard rock music from a guy that looks like me? So let's play it up a little bit.
Yeah.
So that first album that we put out, it's called The CEO, but it's still very much during that time where I was writing about being, those things that, the wine, women, and song type stuff. And you can't find that album today because I pulled it.
You pulled it.
I pulled it.
Interesting.
Yes, because those songs are not representative of who I am today. They're representative. They're like a yearbook of who I was then, but not who I am today. But that album got enough attention to where Vinnie Hornsby from Seven Dust says, this is good. Let's put a proper band around you and let's put you in a proper studio with a proper producer. So he introduced us to Elvis Basscat, who's Grammy Award-winning producer out of Florida. And again, another situation that was just a gift from God, because there's no reason why I should be sitting in the same room as the guys from Van Halen, have sat, or the guys from Rat, or the guys from Incubus, or whoever. I shouldn't be in that same room. But God put me in that room with that producer, with these guys. And then, next thing you know, Vinny's joining the band. So we cut the Redemption album. And I named it Redemption, not only after one of the songs on the album, but because my life completely changed it right during that time. I turned around and started coming home. I was no longer eating out of the pit trough. I was hanging my head down and headed home to my Father. And those songs are representative of it. You still get a little bit of who I was on that path. You get a whole lot of hope on that record. I am coming home.
Yeah.
That's the Redemption record. And it was a gift from God. He gave it to me. He says, you can write music, you can play on the biggest studios, and we're going to put it out to the world. Didn't deserve it, but that's the Redemption record. So 4 years later, I get married. I'm a stepfather to, some amazing kids. I've got a new house. Everything in my life at that point is going because I'm back home. The Lord put the robe and the ring on me, and I'm home. So this record, the new one, The Path Remains, and that's why I call it The Path Remains, because that path home, regardless of the destruction behind you or beside you, the path home remains. And that's what it's my thank you letter or my love letter back to God. So this is representative of who I am today.
Yeah. I got to tell you, man, I remember the first time I heard that The Path Remains, I was praising God. I was in the gym, man. And I listened to your first single. It was leg day, man. I was hitting some legs. And I'm like, let me put this on. Let me check this out. Let me hear what this sounds like because I knew it was going to rock out, man. And it's a perfect song to listen to when I, started my leg workout. And then, man, as I got your album, man, and I started listening to every track. I mean, I could just hear how your transformation took place and how you shared that from song to song to song. And I was like, man, this guy, Mack Mullins, he is walking strong with the Lord. And that's what I knew, man. That's what I knew, that I got to have you on my podcast so my listeners in the world can hear about this amazing transformation that Jesus has done in your life, man. So you know what? I could tell already. I could tell right now. I thought this would be just a one episode podcast interview, but I could tell now that we're going to need to turn this into 2 weeks. Are you down with that?
100%. Yeah. And I hope I haven't monopolized your time, but I just enjoy spending some time with you. So absolutely. Let's do it.
Well, no, not at all. I love spending time with you. And so much so that we're going to turn this into another podcast episode. But this is what I'm thinking, my brother Mack Mullins. We're going to do kind of a lightning round type of theme.
Mhm.
All right. I'm going to name every track off your new album, The Path Remains.
Okay.
And you just tell me in a sentence or two what that song, yes, put that up so all of our listeners, all of our people viewing, yes. So here, are you ready, my brother?
Let's do it.
All right. Song 1, Home.
Just like you would expect. It's about that journey home. This, one of the lines in this song is, "This could be your saving grace. This could be your home." This is the now that I never thought I would know.
Mm.
So that's home to me. Welcome
All
home.
right. I love it, man. That's powerful. Song number 2, which was a single that you dropped, The Other Side of Hate.
So much of media, social media, the news. I mean, it's so divisive. It's so ugly. It's almost like it's designed to generate hate. And that's it. There's another side, and that's love. And there's a whole community of people out there doing beautiful and lovely things. So there's another side of this. The other side of hate is love. So it's kind of like, look past the garbage that you see every single day and look at a lot of the beauty that's out there in this world. That's the other side of hate.
Love it. Love it. Song number 3, 30 Pieces.
30 Pieces. Obviously, those that have read their Bible know that that's the price that was paid to Judas to betray Jesus. And that's still going on to this day, whether it's politicians or the song was definitely written, basically pointed at world leadership and U.S. politicians that are easily, or even corporate leaders that are just paid to betray. And that's what that's about.
Yeah. Yeah. Song number 4, I Am War.
I Am War, song about addiction, whatever that addiction is to you, whether it's, drugs, alcohol, pornography, or social media, or whatever your addiction may be. It's a war that rages inside of you. And, the hook line is, and I should have known better. And because you do know better.
That's good, man. Song number 5, Bleed.
Bleed. I love Bleed. That song, it's funny, you were talking about leg day during the gym. That song was written in the gym. And at the time certain days I would listen to my my Jesus podcast, and other days I would listen to motivational stuff. So I wanted to write a song that was basically a motivational workout song. So it was kind of like, even though life can be hard, you will bleed, but you'll bleed till the end, so keep persevering until you win, until you get those gains, until you win what it is that you're going to do. You're going to take your shots, but you will win. That's Bleed.
Bleed. I love it. All right. Song number 6, Breaking My Rear View.
Breaking My Rear View is about, forgiving yourself, not looking backwards on your sins and your past. It's basically, the windshield is obviously a lot bigger than the rear view mirror. So no reason we look backwards, break it. Let's just look forward.
Love it. Love it. Powerful. Song number 7, The Divine Line. Come on.
Yeah. Divine Line. Obviously it's about hanging on to that divine line. It's that connection that you have with your creator. Simple as that.
Song number 8, Do or Die.
Do or Die. That was written for the son of one of my really good friends here, whose father baptized me, and he's a pastor, and his son is an incredible country musician who moved to Nashville to be a country music star. And it was about basically, hey, don't let them take your soul there. Don't forget who you are and who you belong to on your journey in Nashville. So it's Do or Die.
So good. So good. Song number 9, Valley of Dry Bones.
Obviously a reference to Ezekiel. So, what I love about that song is there's a verse in there that says, I walk away from everything so I can run to bear my soul to you that created it. It's basically walking away from the past and running to God and bearing your soul to him. So it's a valley of dry bones, where it's basically it's where you come back to life.
Love it. Powerful, man. The 10th track.
Yes.
On The Path Remains, which I recommend every person listening to this podcast or watching this podcast, you pick that up today. Don't waste time. you need to get that today. We're gonna share with you at the end of this episode on how you can pick The Path Remains up today. Track number 10, On Top of the World.
Top of the world. That's just a good old fashioned. Hey, I've been saved by the Spirit of God, and I feel amazing about it. No longer left behind. I'm standing on top of the world.
Track 11, Eyes of God.
Eyes of God. That was influenced by the scene in The Chosen with Nathaniel and Jesus, when Nathaniel meets Jesus. When he's praying out to the Lord under the olive tree, and asking if the Lord sees him, and then obviously he does. So it was that whole meeting had a big impact on me, and that song was written around that scene.
Wow. I will never read or think about that scripture without thinking about that track, Eyes of God. That is incredible, man. I love it. Powerful. The river. Tell us about the river.
The river, everything I lost and everything I am was found in the river. And obviously, there's many scriptural references to, water and baptism, and, the water of life and the river of life. And, everything that I am was found in that river. So that's that.
Yeah. All right. You had a bonus track called The Words. Tell us about that, man.
It's funny when you put together a song like The Words, which is, and if you listen to it, it's extremely personal. Not everybody is going to understand it. It's musically different than what we've done. It's kind of had this Led Zeppelin vibe at the end or whatever. Most of the guys, even the record label, wasn't sure about it, but it was the most personal song on the record for me, in that it's my conversation. It's my real life conversation with God, where he's basically telling me, I'm bringing you home. Don't be afraid. And those were the words that were said to me, so I am bringing you home. Be not afraid. As simple as that. And that's the premise of that song. And it's funny because I honestly, songs like that, you think that no one's going to care. It's probably one of our top stringed songs on the album across the world.
That's incredible. You know where we're going to end today's podcast interview, session number 1 with Mack Mullins right now. But when we come back next week, man, we're going to start off your interview next week going a little bit deeper into the song, The Words, so people can hear more of your heart of that song and how God spoke to you and what that song's about. As we leave here today, man, you know what? My podcast is mostly a Christian podcast. We're in 85 countries around the world. Most of them are, they're Jesus followers. But man, anytime we have an audience this size, there's going to be some people, they're listening. They're talking about, they hear you talking about your transition from rock and roll, how Father God has brought you back. You're not a prodigal child anymore. You're back, and you're home with God, and you're walking strong with Jesus. And it's reflected in your music, and they're listening to your story. It's an incredible story. And they're thinking to themselves, man, I'm kind of thinking about God. I'm curious about who Jesus is. I want to know more about him. If you had to give just a simple summary to those listeners that are listening now, why should they consider researching more about Jesus and how that could add value to their lives? What would you share with them, man?
Honestly, I would say that, it's more real than the desk that I am sitting at today, and believer or non-believer, you will meet him. And I will tell you that he loves you, and following Jesus will make your life better and make you better at life.
There it is.
There it is.
That's all you need to know. And that is essentially the good news. Mack Mullins, tell our listeners how they can get The Path Remains and all your other music before we jump off of today's pod episode.
Well, if you're a classic like Mark and I, and you like the physical, you want a vinyl or a CD or along those lines, just go to Pak Records, RATPAK records.com, and you can get physical copies of our music. But if you're a streaming person, we're on Apple, we're on Spotify, we're on YouTube, we're on all the major streaming outlets. So either way, we certainly appreciate you taking a listen, and hopefully it lands on you the way that I hoped it.
Awesome, amazing, and I'll make sure to include all the hyperlinks so people who want to get your music today can get it today by one click. Mack Mullins, I look forward to seeing you again next week for your part two interview. We're going to dive deeper into your music, deeper into your life, and then deeper into your walk with Jesus. Man, I'll see you here next week, my brother, for part two of your interview. Thank you so much for making the time today.
Let's do it, buddy. Let's do it.
Let's do it.
Thanks so much for your time with me today. It's been an amazing time. And thank you so much for listening. I hope you enjoyed today's episode and it inspired you on your journey of sharing your faith in Jesus with others. Make sure to check out the podcast show notes for a description of today's show along with other details you're going to want to know about. And also make sure to share this episode with a friend and subscribe over on Apple Podcasts as well. I really appreciate your feedback, Evangelism on Fire listeners. So share a review on Apple and let me know what part of this episode resonated with you the most. And if no one has told you lately, God loves you, I love you, you matter, and you have divine purpose. Now it's time to go out there and share the gospel message with others. Make sure to join me for our next episode next Tuesday in 7 days. I'll see you then.